The thing that I love to remind people is we think vulnerability in other people is courageous, and we think vulnerability in ourselves is weakness.
Mm.
And why do we think that differently? Because if you're being vulnerable and say, I need help, I'm like, yes, I have got you, girl. Let's come on, let's do this together and let's walk it and figure it out. But if I say, I don't know how to do this, then I'm afraid you're going to judge me as less than.
Do you ever feel like you've done all the internal work to be a great leader, but you're still carrying all the weight because your team won't step up and take ownership? Did you know that we have a free community of spirit-led leaders just like you, powerhouse men and women who are digging deep into these exact kingdom principles so they can lead with authentic authority? Head over to authenticvoiceleadership.com right now to join the conversation, connect with like-minded leaders, and grab all of the exclusive resources and goodies from today's expert. Today, we are talking with Sharon Justice, the founder of Justice Leadership. With over 40 years of experience on the people side of business, Sharon is an expert at helping managers turn high-level strategy into real-world teamwork. Today, she is sharing how to move from basic self-awareness to a true culture of team ownership, why being vulnerable is actually your biggest superpower, and how to stop chasing your people by setting crystal clear expectations. Sharon, welcome to the show. I'm so glad that you're here. I would love to hear about what brought you into the work of leadership and where has it brought you now?
Oh, wow. Leslie, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here with you today and to have just a fun conversation. How did I end up in leadership? It's been a 40-year journey. In college, after college, the work, the jobs that I have been privileged to participate in, I found myself on the people side of the business. I did not intend to go into work and focus on the human resources area of business, but I found early on in my career that's where I landed. I had a gift and a passion for working with people and equipping leaders to manage, lead, take care of their people over my career. And as I have gotten older and maybe a little, I don't know, wiser, or at least got a few more bumps and bruises and some experiences, I've come to recognize that whether you manage your own business and you're a team of one, you got to interact with people, or if you are managing thousands, you still have to interact with people. And being a leader is hard work. And I just want to be able to come alongside leaders and provide tools, resources, support, a listening ear as they walk along that journey, because you don't have to do things alone. And oftentimes, when you're in that first role, you think you should already know it. So that's not true. When you've been doing it for 40 years, you think you should already know it. And that's not true either, because every situation is different. So, I just love coming alongside on that journey. And I've been privileged to be able to do that in the work that I'm doing in consulting for the last 15 years.
And I know we've talked about a little bit about the gap in leadership, and I would love to hear you talk about that because you have a resource for our audience that is going to help them find that. And I would love to hear you talk about that a little bit.
So, the leadership gap is something that has evolved as I've worked with individuals and gained lots of experience in situations and scenarios. And so, the leadership gap scorecard allows us to look at the components of leadership. So, I use an acronym, CALG. It's clarity, alignment, leadership, growth, to help us figure out where are we on that circle. And it really is a circle. It's a puzzle piece. It's a process. It's not ever one and done. And so when you think about it, you either, as a leader, you are crystal clear, and yet you don't have the systems and processes in place to allow your people to perform. Maybe you're not crystal clear, but you think you are. And so that's where it breaks down. You may want your people to do more and you want them to take on more responsibility and be accountable or delegate, but it's just not working for whatever reason. And so that becomes the lead or the communicate part of the gap. And then ultimately, you're trying to grow your people and grow your business. Because otherwise, why are we here if we're not trying to grow and be better at what we're doing and provide better services? And so your gap shows up in one or more of those areas. And so that's what the tool that I have assesses where your primary gap is, because that's usually it's either a root cause or it's a symptom of what might be happening to keep you from being your very best self and leading your team in the most excellent way.
So when I talk about a gap in the radiant leader, we talk about the gap between what's going on internally and what shows up in our expression. So when you talk about the gap, where are you starting from and where are you going and what does the gap mean for you?
So we look at it really in a process and actions and behaviors. Yes,
Mm.
that what's going on in our head and our heart, there's at times a disconnect. But I talk about it this way, I know what I want to do and how I want to do it. But if I can't clearly communicate that, articulate it, and get the why out there to my team or my clients or my customer base to understand, then I'm not connecting the dots. And that is the emotional connection. So there's layers and components. I can't assess the emotional connection and the stories that are going on behind the scenes through, an assessment scorecard. That comes with conversations. But the assessment scorecard where you answer questions, those are on actions and behaviors. Do I know where my company is headed? Can I state where it's headed and can people repeat back exactly where it's headed? If if that is the same and everybody can do it, then you're clear. So we move on. Do they have job descriptions? Do they have roles and responsibilities? And are they performing those roles and responsibilities just like I want them to? If they can't, then that's where the gap is because something's missing in their performance, their understanding, and what I want them to do. So we work through it that way in concrete behaviors that leaders must exhibit in order to be excellent. And usually we can find one or two cracks or at least places where we can all be better because we're constantly juggling and we don't have it all together all the time. And it is an ebb and flow.
Oh, I love that so much. It really is an ebb and flow. And so I would love you to talk a little bit more. You said earlier that let's not do this alone. Let's not be leaders alone. And we may be in a space right here and we think we should know something. And when we realize we don't, we can start to learn that thing. But how do we have grace for ourselves? And as we grow in our leadership abilities and as we find those disconnects, that grace that we sometimes don't give ourselves as leaders. What
Right.
do you have to say into that?
I mean, there's so many layers to how we judge ourselves. Patrick Lencioni has written lots about this. We judge ourselves through what we see other people do, and we think, "Oh, I should be able to do that." And then we judge them on what we are able to do. They should be able to do that. Well, just think about that. I mean, we got all this stuff going on in our brain, but yet we're not talking about it and we're not recognizing that you are a different person than I am. You have different experiences than I do. And the only way we can get all of that on the same page is through conversation, through written word, through verbal instruction, through job shadowings, through coaching, development, through listening and learning to others. And so we're judging ourselves and we think, well, I should know this, so how am I going to figure it out? I don't want anybody to know that I don't know it. But yet there's people all around you in every walk of life that have maybe walked that journey ahead of you or have can help shepherd you. The thing that I love to remind people is we think vulnerability in other people is courageous. And we think vulnerability in ourselves is weakness.
I
And
love
why do
that.
we think that differently? Because if you're being vulnerable and say, I need help, I'm like, yes, I have got you, girl. Come on, let's do this together and let's walk it and figure it out. But if I say, I don't know how to do this, then I'm afraid you're going to judge me as less than. And if you
Mm.
judge me as less than, then I think, well, she won't trust me. She won't follow me. She'll think I don't know what I'm doing. And yet, if I reverse it, when you say that, I trust you. I want to help and I want to engage and I want us to figure it out. So, again, what we have going on in our brain and our heart is where the disconnect is. And we've got to recognize, call it out so that we can do something about it.
I love that so much. And I love how you bring forth our different perceptions of vulnerability
Mhm.
because I love to talk about being vulnerable and how that builds trust, how it establishes connection. In order to truly lead someone well, we have to have connection and we have to have trust because it's not telling people what to do. That is not true leadership. True
No.
leadership is coming alongside and growing together and being someone worthy of following. And so I love how you bring forth the vulnerability. Can you talk a little bit more about how that shows up in some of your experiences and how people have walked through being afraid of being vulnerable, but then learning to be courageous?
There's so many stories and there's lots of different methods and everybody's journey isn't the same. I am a practitioner of self-awareness comes first. So when I begin to work with a leader, if we're doing one-on-one coaching, we're first going to talk about where are you in your journey. Usually it's a springboard off of that leadership gap scorecard, but then it's much deeper. It's like, okay, this is what the behaviors are, but what's really driving it? Where do you find, the barriers? So I do a lot of work with emotional intelligence, things like strength finders, so that we can dig into this is what I bring to the table, but here's where those gaps are, and how do we create awareness? And then sometimes it's just practice. I want you to go out and say that you don't know how to do this, or you're not sure, and ask somebody for help or let your team help you solve the problem and see how much they grow and engage and, evaluate if they judge you or not. Sometimes we just need that support, that nudge in the background to go try it. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? They're going to say, "We don't know, and we're looking at you to figure it out." Then you go, "Okay, let's figure it out together." So it's there's no one set answer, there's no one approach because every one of us is different, but we have to try and not be worried about the repercussions. Now, that requires a safe, trusting environment where risk taking is embraced, rewarded, and you're not getting punished. And I know not every culture is that way. When you say, I don't know, some cultures are very punitive. So you got to figure out where you are in your culture in the organization. But if you're the leader of the organization, you have control of that and you need to tamp down that I'm going to, punish anybody that makes a mistake. That's how you get into that bad culture.
That's so good. That is so good. And we really do have a lot more control than we think over the culture of our company when we're the business owners or we're the leader in the company or in our own businesses. Sometimes we say, "Oh, well, the people who are working for us aren't doing what they're supposed to do." But are we looking at ourselves in the mirror and saying, "How can I grow here so that I can foster that culture, that company
Right.
culture?"
Yeah, culture is intentional. And if you are not intentionally developing your culture, then it's developing for you, around you, in spite of you. And there is a saying, goes back, I don't know how long, but it says, culture will eat your strategy for lunch if you're not careful. And so,
Ooh.
yeah, you have to be intentional. So if I expect people to participate in weekly team meetings and they need to be there on time, then I need to set that standard and hold the line and hold people accountable because they'll follow and they'll do whatever I allow as the
Mhm.
leader.
I love that you said they do whatever you allow. So, what does boundary setting look like in the terms of leading a
Cool.
team?
So, you know, you have to look at where is it that we're headed? What is our goal? And how are we going to get there? And then if that means, you're delivering on a tight deadline and there's overtime this week and we've got to just all hands on deck, then that I don't mean you got to work 100 hours in the week and beat up your people. That should not be an everyday thing. But you put in and say, this is what my expectation is. Here's where I need you to step up and contribute. Are there issues? Are there concerns? It's about expectation setting first. If you don't have clear expectations, then you can't have boundaries. If I am parent that has kid pickup, then I need to clearly say that doesn't work for me because I don't have kid pickup. I can't stay extra on these dates and here's what's going on, but what can I do to help otherwise? So, there's lots of ways that we set boundaries. Boundaries is, you know, after a certain time at night, I don't pick up my phone, I don't respond, and I don't engage with work. That's a personal boundary for me. And when my kids were little, it was an absolute hard stop because they're like, Mom, are you here? Are you with us? Or are you still working? I've never had anybody say, "You didn't answer me at 9 o'clock. Where were you?" They'll
Right.
wait, you know? So boundaries are how are we gonna guard our personal time, our work time? How are we going to lead and manage others? How are we gonna let people slide and get away with something that's not helpful for our company or it's bad behavior, or ethical behavior? It's all about being really clear with what I expect and how I communicate those expectations.
I love that you said that expectations and setting those expectations comes before you can really hold to a
Sure.
boundary. And
Absolutely.
I think that even starts within ourselves. Holding what expectations do I have for myself so that I can set those boundaries and then communicate those expectations that
Mhm.
are going to align with my personal boundaries
Yes.
and the boundaries of what's going on with our team. Because I know even with our family, alignment has to do with what goes on here first. And radiating authority is about being who you are and being solid in who you are wherever you are. So if you're at home, like you said, you're at home. My boundary is this is not work time, this is home time. And that is authoritative to say, this is my boundary, and I'm asking you to follow what I've asked you to do, which can be hard for the people pleasers.
So
And
hard. You don't wanna say no. You're afraid of hurting somebody or letting somebody down.
yes, and so I would love to see how you say the to bridge the gap between people pleasing and holding boundaries and knowing, just really having that internal knowing of what you need so that you can be a better leader.
So, we do start, as you said, we have to know what our boundaries are and what we are striving for. And then we have to do a gut check. Is it too much or too little? Because, overachievers will pack way too much in and it's not realistic. Underachievers will be like, well, I'll just let it bleed over tomorrow. And so then you have miscommunication and disconnect. Now, the question about people pleasers, I'm a student of DISC. I love DISC behavior styles. And when I look at something like that, there are those of us that are very direct and we say, nope, can't do that. I'm comfortable saying no, or I'm comfortable saying yes. Here's what's on my list. Then there are the perfectionists that have to get everything perfect and through their list, and they may or may not say yes to help. They might say no. There's the salespeople that are like, no, I might be too messy and I'm not going to say yes and I'm not going to be the people pleaser. Just, you know, let's all get along together. Kumbaya, it'll be fine. And then there are those of us who say yes to everything because we're the only one who says yes at times, because all those other types of styles might say no rapidly. We value those relationships, not that the other styles don't, but we're so focused on the relationship that we subjugate our own needs and we put everybody else first. We might not be comfortable with what we perceive as conflict because we're driven to create harmony if we're a people pleaser. And where some others might see conflict as dialogue and discussion and challenge and fun, the people pleasers are like, well, that creates some anxiety or angst in me. And so it really becomes that awareness of I have a tendency to say yes regularly, so I might need my team members to help me by not asking me so much,
Mhm.
and some tools to say, I need to evaluate against X, Y, or Z before I say yes. And so equipping you with tools and processes and gut checks before you say yes can help you not just be a people pleaser, but you're moving the work forward and you're taking care of yourself.
So if someone were new to leading and or new to self-awareness in their leading,
Mm.
and they want to become more aware and more emotionally intelligent and lead their people a little bit better, where would you say that they should start?
There's lots of free resources out there these days. And, AI at every turn can feel like somebody that can coach you through it or an assessment. I'd say be cautious with where you're getting your advice to make sure that it's real advice. So, read and study trusted authors. Find somebody like me or you that's a coach and has resources and that can help you discover. Look for groups, communities online, whether it's in school or LinkedIn. When I say school, SKOOL, or
Yes.
your, you know, or your college, university, high school, those alumni. Find your people and start to talk about it. You can learn about it. You can get on LinkedIn and Google emotional intelligence, and there are lots of groups that are talking about it. But again, if you want to dig deep, find a practitioner, find a coach that can take you through an emotional intelligence assessment so that you got a real data, validated data, and you got something to work for. So I know that's a long answer, but there's lots of places to find it. It's whether or not you have resources. Sometimes companies, if you're in a small, mid-sized company, large corporation, they'll pay for things like this for you to go and learn more about it, put you in leadership development programs. So lots of ways to find it, but be careful who you listen to.
That's really good advice. So you'd mentioned a couple of things already, strengths finders, the DISC assessment, and there's lots of like, I don't know, fun personality tests
Uh-huh.
and it's kind of fun to see where you are on those spectrums. And I know like Strengths Finder is one of my favorite. I dig into Strengths Finder a lot. So if
Yeah.
somebody hasn't heard of that, they look it up. It's by Gallup. And so, how has that helped you in your leadership development and helping people know who they are? And I think self awareness is probably one of the very first things of becoming emotionally intelligent because
Uh-huh.
if we're not self aware, we're not going to be others aware. And for leadership, true leadership, not just being in charge, but actually leading well, being the shepherd, we've got to understand our strengths and weaknesses and what our team's strengths and weaknesses are too, so that then we're pulling on their strengths and covering their weaknesses because we all
Right.
know in part and we see in part scripturally, right? So we are
Yes.
not blessed with everything, but we are blessed with the things that we are blessed with. And how have those tools helped you in that self awareness process, but maybe even both for yourself and for the people that you've led?
Well, the tools are that. They're just tools. They are fantastic tools, and each one has a purpose. I'm always cautious about labels because I don't put the stock in just a label for the sake of a label. It is the entry door to conversation and action and behaviors. So, you know, I've used, and I'm certified in probably too many of them, quite honestly. But each one has a purpose, and depending on the appetite of a team, an organization, or an individual, you find the right tool, and all it does is open the conversation. I did a group yesterday. We did Working Genius yesterday, which is another fun one. And while the Working Genius assessment is fantastic, what happened is we began working through relationship challenges, conflict, through process breakdowns. And it was simply because we had a common language. We came together in some, awareness and some humor, but immediately it opened the door to go, oh, you're so opposite of where I am, and this is what's happening, and this is how you approach, this is how I approach. And I was watching the group just open up like a flower because they had been closed. We started it because they needed a little bit of team building, but it began really to solve issues. They walked out of there with actions, with promises, with, commitments to help them be better leaders. So it started with that awareness, then it was group awareness, then it became organizational awareness. And so that's what happens. We have to lead ourselves before we can lead others in a team.
I love that so much. So say that again. You self awareness and then group awareness and then
Yes. Yeah.
team
So it's
awareness.
it's self, others, individuals, and then you got to lead yourself, lead your team, lead your organization.
That's beautiful. That's a great process. In our authentic voice program, we talk about awareness, action, and alignment. So being aware is the first step. No matter where you come from, you have to be aware of it, and you can't take action if you're not aware. But
Right.
once you're aware, you have a responsibility to take action.
Exactly.
What action do I need to take? And then from that action, alignment can come. And
Mhm.
so do you find that to be kind of the same way and the type of leadership that development that you do?
Absolutely. As soon as somebody becomes aware, I mean, you know, you can have somebody that has been leading. I had an individual that we went through one of these. I think we were doing we were doing a DISC assessment. And she said, I know I should know this, but just being reminded that not everybody thinks and processes the same way I do. Why is it just taking me until now to just be able to articulate that? She said, I know
True.
it. I feel it. I've been doing this for decades, but being reminded that Everybody is different. Everybody takes a different approach, and we need to have a little grace with each other and ourselves. But when we can realize where again, going back to the gap, when we can realize what the gap is between me and somebody else, then we can work to close it. And that's where the beauty happens. That's
That's
when we start to
wonderful.
lead in our most excellent way.
Oh, that's great. I love leading in our most excellent way. That's
Mhm.
so good. Is there anything else that you want to bring forth and or any remarks that you have that can help people on their leadership journey when they're even thinking about self-awareness and taking those steps to be able to connect on a deeper level and be the kind of leader people want to follow?
You know, I opened up and said, leading people is hard and it feels overwhelming at times. And so if you're a leader and you start to just wonder why everybody else is out to get you or why they're not doing what you want them to do or why things just aren't working, it feels really heavy. I want you to stop and pause and flip it back. What could I be doing differently that would help them be more successful?
Mm.
What am I seeing in this situation that, what am I not seeing in this situation that's contributing to their lack of performance? What can I do to be more clear, more transparent? Because again, I said it earlier, I don't think we set out to irritate each other, but we do. I don't think we set out to not perform and do what we're supposed to do in the work that, the jobs that we have. But we do. And it's usually because somebody's not clear about something.
I love that. I just had a conversation recently with a manager of a restaurant here, and he said that they're coming out, all the closers that close down the restaurant in the evening have just not been doing a good job. And what it came down to in that restaurant is the lack of training to know what's actually expected of them when they're closing the restaurant. And it trickles down. So all of the servers that are supposed to, the closers, the people who close down the restaurant are supposed to check out the people before they leave, but they weren't doing that because they didn't really know what to look for. And then there's an element of people pleasing in that too, I think,
Hmm.
where you've done the work. Okay, you've had a good day. I'll take care of it. But then it comes back on you because it's not done. But those expectations, those clear expectations from the top down to the
Hmm.
bottom, I would say, and like we don't like hierarchy, but when it comes to a business like that, it's there.
It's there.
So when the manager says, I'm looking for these things, and that's well communicated to the people who are closing the restaurant, then they know what to look for in the other people. If they
Right.
don't have that, then everybody's disappointed, everybody's upset, and then stuff happens.
Right down. So I use this example just for that scenario. We all tell people around us, I want you to be at work on time and ready to go. And we think we have communicated a great expectation, right?
Mhm,
But if you and I would write down our expectations right now of what it means to be at work on time, we
mhm.
might have a very different definition. I might say, I need to be here 15 minutes early. Everything's logged in. I am ready to go. And I've, just got my cup of coffee on the desk. Your definition might be as long as my computer is on and I'm at the desk at the dot of when I'm supposed to be here, then I am on time. And if the leader has an even different expectation, then we are not meeting the leader's expectation. And yet all the leader has said, I want you to be on time. And we're all correct, but it's slightly nuanced. So that's what we have to be cautious about and check ourselves. Are we being really clear with our expectations so everybody defines it the exact same way?
That's awesome because when you asked the question, my first thought went, well, I'm walking in the door at 7 o'clock. We're supposed to be there at 7. I'm walking in the door at 7, swiping my time card says here at 7. But if you expect me to be at my desk with my computer on and my coffee at 7,
Different.
for me, it would be like, you need to be here by 6:45. Because I work on my self-awareness. I think about that when I was teaching at the high school. We needed to be at the school by 7:30, and class starts at 7:55. So the kids are coming in at the first bell rings at 7:55, and everybody's in their desk starting their schoolwork at 8 o'clock. And so the 7:30 time frame was everybody's walking in the door most of the time. And that works for when you have a specific set of time crunches, I guess that you would call it. So here's the first bell, here's the second bell, here's this bell,
Right.
but that's how high school is structured. But
Right.
in the world outside of high school, you don't have the different little bells.
Set your own bells if you need them.
So here's the 1-minute warning bell. You better be getting in that classroom door and shutting the
Yeah.
door. The teacher closes the door because,
Yeah.
teaching in a high school for so long, I saw that so many times kids are running down the hallways to get in when that warning bell goes off, but they're just standing around talking before that
Right.
because that's their social time.
Well, and that's how our future workers are trained. So they've got the bell, they've got the warning bell, they know what it meant to be on time in high school. And then as they come out into the workplace, we have to start being really clear about what our expectations are, especially if it's a new worker coming into, an event and then, or an office or workplace. And then every time somebody joins your team, whatever the expectations were in the old place, they bring those same expectations in the new place and they might not be the same. So
That's so good.
it's a constant. We've got to set what we want for our team and be really clear.
Oh, that's really good. I love that you shared that because we really do bring in those expectations from wherever we have been and kind
Mhm.
of adopt that for ourselves. And I love that. So I think that's a great place to be on this because as we're leading our people and being aware of ourselves, but also being aware of them and the way that we become aware of what's going on with them is by asking questions.
Mhm. Asking questions. Ask great questions. Don't ask questions that start with why too much. Ask other questions. Why puts us on the defensive, but ask other questions that are engaging, open-ended, that will foster, dialogue and conversation. See what you can learn by asking a great question.
That's good. Asking better questions is that's the premise of coaching. It's the premise of teaching. We think that it's transferring information, telling people what to do, but it's really more about understanding and asking the questions and this path to self discovery. When you
Yes.
can take your team and let them discover, then you are really leading them to their own agency. And when they have their own agency, then your team will blossom because you're coming
Right.
from a place of undergirding and being like the servant leader, I suppose, is what or
Absolutely. You're teaching, but you're allowing engagement and buy-in and ownership of the process. I'd say all the time that a leader's superpower starts with great questions. When you ask questions instead of telling people what to do, but you ask them and guide them, then they are learning the process themselves. You are assessing where their gaps are, where their difference in understanding is. They are processing and cognitively engaged in problem solving and participating. And it's a beautiful thing to watch when it really works well.
that's wonderful. Okay, so remind us now where they can get your leadership gap scorecard and where they can find you to dig into this with you a little bit more.
So I can be found on all the socials, Sharon Justice or Justice Leadership. And you can find me and the Leadership Gap Scorecard at justiceleadership.com. There is a button right at the top that says, take the scorecard or discover. I put out tons of resources, a weekly newsletter, and I would love to just have people engage and find the freebies that are out there because I truly want people to be better leaders because I don't think it should have to be so hard. So you can find me again at justiceleadership.com.
Awesome. And I'll also have that link in the show notes for everybody and a little recap of what we've talked about. Is there anything that you want to add today before we wrap up?
Leslie, the conversation has been rich. We've talked about a lot of things, great nuggets. And so I just appreciate the opportunity being able to talk about how we can all be better leaders at home, at work, in our community, in our churches, with our friends and neighbors, because it all works together. We're surrounded. We need to be surrounded by people, and we just need to engage and encourage and be great communicators.
That's wonderful. So, thank you so much, Sharon, for being on the show today and for spending your time with us, pouring
Thanks for
out your
having
heart with us. I really appreciate it.
Hey, Radiant Leader, to dive deeper into our resources and connect with a powerhouse circle of like-minded leaders, come join our free community right now over at authenticvoiceleadership.com. I will meet you right back here next Tuesday. Your voice matters. Lead wild, lead free. Stay radiant, my friend.